Here is a bitter psychological truth that most people will aggressively deny when you get furiously angry at someone. It is almost never about justice, as it is almost always about your own fragile ego. Imagine you are driving 65 miles per hour down the freeway, minding your own business, and a stranger suddenly cuts you off, forcing you to slam on the brakes. Instantly, your blood boils. In a matter of milliseconds, your ego, desperately wanting to feel superior, builds a compelling and dramatic story in your head. In this narrative, you are the completely innocent, flawless victim of the situation, while the other driver is the evil, toxic villain who represents everything wrong with society today. You convince yourself that your sudden rage is completely justified, a righteous reaction to a genuine wrong. But ancient Stoicism and modern psychology completely dismantle this comfortable, self-serving illusion. Always remember this uncomfortable truth. Self-righteous anger is just disguised pride. We walk around wearing this pride like a heavy armor, using it to shield our deepest insecurities from the world. Modern psychology actually has a name for this phenomenon, calling it the projection bias, which is the deeply ingrained human tendency to exaggerate the faults of others while completely minimizing our own. Notice how incredibly hypocritical we are in our daily lives. When we tell a lie, lose our patience with a loved one, or accidentally hurt someone's feelings, we quietly look the other way and rationalize our behavior. We tell ourselves comforting lies like, "I did not really mean to do it. I had good intentions." Or it was just a one-time exception because I was stressed out. We give ourselves endless miles of grace. But the moment someone else makes the exact same mistake, we react violently. We point our fingers directly in their face and judge them with the harshest possible metrics. We weaponize our anger to look down on them, using their momentary lapse in judgment to artificially elevate our own sense of moral superiority. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, accurately described the angry person as being like a collapsing building that is reduced to rubble, even as it crushes what it falls upon. When you explode at the barista who got your coffee order wrong, or type out a furious email to a coworker who missed a deadline, you are not acting as an agent of cosmic justice. You are simply allowing your mind to be overthrown by a short-lived madness. You are letting your fragile ego dictate your reality, becoming a slave to external events that are entirely outside of your control. We desperately cling to the belief that our anger is a show of virtue or a necessary spur to virtue. But at most, it only substitutes for virtue in those who fundamentally lack it. The Stoics understood that this reactive deficit makes us weak, turning us into puppets who moan about adversities, blame others, and display anger whenever the world does not perfectly align with our expectations. The reactive individual becomes a puppet to external circumstances, allowing external conditions to dictate his sentiments and emotions. Meanwhile, the true master of their own mind understands that anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Think about the energy you waste pacing around your living room, rehearsing imaginary arguments in your head, and letting a single minor slight ruin a perfectly good day. This is the ultimate loss of personal freedom. The Stoics categorize this uncontrolled fury not just as a simple emotional failure, but as a septic and corrosive adversary to wisdom and tranquility. It is a terrifying realization to look in the mirror and accept that the furious indignation you feel is not a righteous sword, but rather a flimsy shield protecting a bruised ego. When we are offended by the faults of others, we almost always forget to look at ourselves and consider our own faults, blinding ourselves to the times we have been equally impatient, jealous, or careless. So, the next time you feel that familiar heat rising in your chest and the urge to explode takes over, you must pause and ask yourself a brutal, unforgiving question. Are you really fighting against an injustice? Or are you just upset because your pride got bruised by stripping away the illusion of righteous fury? You take the first painful but necessary step toward true emotional mastery, preparing your mind to learn the ultimate ancient secret that will give you the power to extinguish this destructive psychological fire in mere seconds. To truly understand the profound psychological mechanism required to extinguish this internal fire, you must travel back in time and put yourself in the sandals of the most powerful man on the face of the earth, Caesar Augustus, the undisputed master of the vast Roman Empire. Imagine possessing a level of absolute authority that modern people cannot even begin to comprehend. Your empire spans millions of square miles, and millions of lives are entirely dependent on your mood. If a servant accidentally spills a goblet of wine on your expensive silk robe, or if a politician dares to question your strategic decisions, you do not have to argue, and you do not have to compromise. You possess the terrifying ability to erase them from existence with a simple wave of your hand. This level of limitless power is the ultimate trap for the fragile human ego. When you never face any negative consequences for your actions, your pride inflates to a monstrous size, and every minor inconvenience is immediately perceived as a massive, unforgivable insult. History is filled with leaders who were destroyed by this exact psychological trap. Consider Alexander the Great, a brilliant military commander who successfully conquered kings and expanded his territory across the known world. Yet he was completely brought low by his own uncontrolled anger. In a sudden, explosive fit of rage, Alexander murdered his own close friend, the very man who had previously saved his life in battle. Alexander could conquer nations, but he could not conquer his own mind. Augustus was acutely aware of this historical tragedy, and he desperately wanted to avoid becoming a slave to his own emotional impulses. To prevent his ego from turning him into a bloodthirsty tyrant, he sought the guidance of a brilliant Stoic philosopher named Athenodorus, who served as his personal tutor and mentor. Athenodorus spent years studying the intricate architecture of human emotion, and he understood perfectly that anger is nothing more than a short-lived madness that violently overthrows reason and logic. After many years of dedicated service to the empire, the elderly philosopher finally begged to be dismissed from the court so he could retire in peace. As he was saying his final goodbyes to the emperor, Athenodorus looked the most powerful man in the world directly in the eyes to deliver his final, parting lesson. He did not hand the emperor a complex philosophical manuscript, nor did he offer a mystical incantation. Instead, he handed Augustus a psychological weapon that was infinitely more powerful than the swords of the entire Roman military. Athenodorus delivered a simple, commanding instruction whenever you get angry. Caesar, do not say or do anything before repeating to yourself the 24 letters of the alphabet. The impact of these words was so profound and immediate that Augustus physically seized his teacher by the hand and declared that he could not let him leave. Realizing he still desperately needed his continuous presence and wisdom, why did such a seemingly elementary trick resonate so deeply with an emperor who literally had the world at his fingertips? Because Athenodorus had identified the precise mechanical flaw in the human mind. The Stoic philosophers understood that the initial burning surge of emotion you feel when someone insults you is a biological reflex. You cannot control that initial spark any more than you can control the weather. However, the true danger does not lie in the spark itself, but in the immediate, impulsive reaction that follows it. The reactive individual acts as a mindless puppet, allowing that initial spark of anger to bypass their logical brain and directly control their tongue and their actions, creating a path of destruction that they will inevitably regret. The alphabet technique is not about learning letters. It is about creating a deliberate, artificial delay between the external event that triggers your anger and your internal decision on how to respond to it. By forcing your brain to complete a mundane, logical task like reciting the alphabet, you are actively denying your fragile ego the immediate satisfaction of a furious outburst. You are building a psychological dam against the turbulent floods of uncontrolled emotion, proving that true power is not the ability to destroy others, but the absolute discipline to govern yourself and reclaim your own mind. The secret that Athenodorus handed to Augustus was not a magical spell, but a profound understanding of human biology and the mechanics of the mind. When you are unexpectedly provoked, perhaps by a condescending remark from a colleague or an unfair accusation from a friend, your body experiences an immediate physiological reaction. Your heart rate violently spikes, your muscles instinctively tense, and a rush of adrenaline floods your system. The ancient Stoic philosophers perfectly understood that this initial, burning flash of emotion is a completely natural, unavoidable biological reflex. You have absolutely no control over this initial spark, just as you have no control over the fact that you will bleed if you are cut. However, this is precisely where the grand illusion traps the weak mind. The weak individual falsely believes that because the initial feeling is natural, the destructive reaction that follows must also be justified and unavoidable. But the true Stoic master understands that there is a critical, microscopic gap between the external event that triggers you and your internal decision to react to it. The entire practice of reciting the 24 letters of the alphabet is designed to forcibly expand that microscopic gap into a controllable window of time. It takes only a few seconds to mentally recite those letters. But those few seconds represent the most crucial battleground in your own mind. By forcing yourself to complete a simple, logical sequence before you open your mouth to shout or move your hands to type a furious message, you are actively denying your fragile ego the immediate, explosive release it is desperately screaming for. You are essentially distracting the petulant child inside of your brain and forcing your logical, rational faculties to turn back on. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who dedicated an entire body of work to studying this destructive emotion, described anger as a short-lived madness. He issued a terrifying warning that perfectly captures the reality of an uncontrolled temper, stating that the angry person is like a collapsing building that is reduced to rubble, even as it crushes what it falls upon. Read that line again and let it truly sink in. When you lose your temper and unleash your wrath upon a family member who made a simple mistake, or when you scream at a customer service representative over a billing error, you might falsely feel powerful in that exact moment. You might feel like you are establishing dominance and demanding respect. But the devastating truth is that you are the collapsing building. You are completely destroying your own inner peace, your dignity, and your emotional stability, merely to crush the person standing in front of you. You are destroying yourself from the inside out just to prove a worthless point. The 24 letters are your ultimate defense mechanism against becoming that pile of rubble. The surest cure for anger is delay. Delay is the ultimate antidote because it allows the toxic, blinding fog of the passionate impression to safely dissipate. When you refuse to react instantly, you regain the supreme power of choice. You look at the spark of anger. You acknowledge its presence. But you boldly refuse to give it your permission to burn down your life. You look at the situation and calmly ask yourself if this momentary annoyance is truly worth sacrificing your tranquility. Is it really worth ruining your entire afternoon just because the cashier at the grocery store was rude to you? The reactive person is a tragic slave to their own blood pressure, allowing every random person they encounter to hold the remote control to their emotional state. But when you implement this simple, 3-second delay, you snatch that remote control back. You prove that you are not a mindless animal reacting to every poke and prod, but a rational human being who governs their own internal empire. This delay strips the situation of its false urgency and exposes the trivial, unimportant nature of most things that enrage us. But mastering this delay is only the very first step. Once you have successfully stopped the collapsing building from falling, you must then learn how to properly look at the rubble surrounding you, which requires turning the weapon of judgment away from the world and directly back onto yourself. Once you have successfully mastered the crucial 3-second delay, and prevented the collapsing building of your anger from crushing everything and everyone around you. You are finally ready for the most uncomfortable and transformative step of all. You must take the blazing, harsh spotlight of judgment that you are so incredibly eager to shine on the mistakes of the outside world and ruthlessly turn it back upon yourself. We desperately love to believe that our anger is righteous, that we are the noble defenders of logic and fairness. But let us be brutally honest about human nature for a moment. Modern psychology refers to our typical behavior as the projection bias, which is the deeply ingrained, almost automatic human tendency to drastically exaggerate the flaws and moral failings of everybody else while completely minimizing and ignoring our very own. Think about your daily life and notice how staggering our hypocrisy truly is. When you arrive late to an important meeting or a dinner appointment, what do you tell yourself in your own mind? You instantly rationalize it by saying the traffic on the freeway was unusually terrible, or your digital alarm clock malfunctioned, or you were just dealing with an overwhelming amount of personal stress. You immediately grant yourself an endless supply of grace and understanding. But when your coworker or your friend walks into that exact same meeting 5 minutes late, you instantly judge their entire character. You label them as lazy, disrespectful, and completely disorganized. When you snap at your romantic partner after a long day, you claim you are simply tired and overwhelmed. But when they snap at you, you declare that they are fundamentally toxic and unsupportive. This staggering, blind hypocrisy is exactly what the great Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius recognized as the ultimate poison to human tranquility. Marcus Aurelius was not just a philosopher sitting in a quiet room. He was a seasoned military commander who spent years in freezing tents on the frontiers of the empire, dealing with treacherous politicians, incompetent generals, and constant betrayal from people he trusted. Yet, his private journals, which we now know as his meditations, are not filled with furious, resentful rants about how terrible everyone else is. Instead, he repeatedly urged himself to use the annoying behavior of others as a mirror to examine his own soul. The philosopher Epictetus delivered a similarly profound lesson when he stated that when you are offended by the faults of others, you must immediately look at yourself and consider your own faults, and then you will quickly forget your anger. The weak mind uses everyday irritation as a weapon to attack the world. But the Stoic master uses irritation as a mirror for deep self-reflection. When you feel the overwhelming urge to explode because someone lied to you, pause and force yourself to remember the last time you bent the truth to protect your own fragile ego or avoid an awkward conversation. When someone is impatient with you at the grocery store, remember the countless times you have rushed a cashier or a waiter because you falsely felt your time was somehow more valuable than theirs. This exercise is not about cultivating self-hatred. It is about developing profound emotional intelligence and strategic, powerful empathy. The Stoics perfectly understood that people generally do not wake up in the morning with the explicit, malicious goal of ruining your specific day. People are usually acting out of their own limited understanding, their own unseen stress, and their own hidden pain. By adopting this inward-looking perspective, you completely neutralize the toxic, dramatic narrative that you are the innocent victim of a malicious, evil world. You consciously shift from a state of hostile retribution to a state of calm, unshakable understanding. You realize that the stranger who cut you off in traffic is probably just as stressed, terrified, and late as you were last week. This radical empathy requires immense psychological strength because it forces you to drop the heavy armor of your self-righteous pride. When you master this inner mirror, you become virtually untouchable because nobody can successfully insult you when you have already accepted your own human imperfections. You stop demanding that the world be flawless, and you start demanding better from yourself, preparing your mind for the next essential shield that the ancients developed to ensure they were never caught off guard by the chaotic world. Now that you have learned to turn the harsh light of judgment inward, You are ready to construct the ultimate psychological shield, a defense mechanism so incredibly powerful that it can prevent the spark of anger from ever igniting in the first place. The ancient Stoics called this practice negative visualization, and while the name might sound incredibly pessimistic to our modern ears, it is actually the most liberating psychological exercise you will ever perform. Why do we actually get angry in our daily lives? We explode because our internal expectations do not perfectly match external reality. The fragile, reactive individual walks out of their front door every single morning carrying a massive, invisible burden of flawless expectations. They expect the freeway traffic to flow perfectly smoothly at 65 miles per hour. They expect their co-workers to be endlessly polite, their coffee order to be flawlessly executed, and their internet connection to never experience a moment of failure. When reality inevitably shatters these unrealistic, childish expectations, their fragile ego perceives it as a direct, personal attack, and the collapsing building of anger immediately begins to fall. But the true master of their own mind approaches the morning entirely differently. Before they even step outside, they engage in a deliberate, conscious contemplation of the absolute worst-case scenarios. They mentally rehearse the exact, specific moments that typically trigger their rage. They vividly picture the excruciatingly long line at the grocery store, the passive-aggressive email from their demanding supervisor, and the reckless driver who will inevitably cut them off without ever using a turn signal. This is not about being a miserable, unhappy pessimist. This is about buying vital emotional insurance. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius perfectly encapsulated this invincible mindset when he declared that you have power over your mind, not outside events. And by realizing this, you will find immense strength. When you practice negative visualization, you are systematically confronting and processing your daily anxieties in a calm, controlled environment, building an anticipatory shield against explosive emotions. Imagine an expert art critic standing in front of an abstract, highly confusing canvas. A fragile ego would become immediately flustered and furiously angry over the inability to understand the artwork, feeling personally insulted by the confusion. But a critic armed with negative visualization has already anticipated this exact feeling of confusion. They fully expect it to be baffled. So when the confusion arrives, they simply smile, accept it as part of the normal appraisal process, and calmly proceed with their analysis. You must apply this incredible superpower to your own modern life. Let us deepen our understanding of the dichotomy between reactive and proactive responses. The reactive individual is a tragic puppet to external circumstances, constantly moaning about adversities and blaming everyone else for their lack of tranquility. They allow a completely random stranger at the airport to dictate their emotional state for an entire week. But by utilizing negative visualization, you forcibly shift your brain into a proactive state. Proactive responses are informed, deliberate, and deeply respectful reactions to situations. You are acting within your absolute sphere of influence, recognizing that you cannot stop the airplane from being delayed, but you have total, unquestionable authority over whether you spend the next 3 hours pacing the terminal in a furious, sweaty rage, or sitting quietly with a good book. If you are driving to a stressful holiday family gathering, and you know from decades of experience that a specific relative is going to make a condescending remark about your career, why on earth would you allow yourself to be surprised and enraged when it actually happens? The reactive puppet walks into that house hoping blindly for a peaceful dinner, and is utterly destroyed when the predictable insult occurs. But the Stoic master visualizes the insult before even pulling into the driveway. You see the relative, you hear the insult in your mind, and you mentally prepare your calm, indifferent response. When the relative finally delivers the expected insult, you do not feel a sudden surge of adrenaline or your blood boil. Instead, you feel a profound sense of inner peace and almost a quiet amusement. because the world is behaving exactly as you predicted it would. You have completely stripped the external event of its power to dictate your internal sentiments. Keeping your tranquility perfectly intact and preparing your mind for the most shocking revelation of all, a historical plot twist that completely redefines the very nature of this dangerous emotion. For over 2,000 years, the most brilliant Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius have aggressively preached that anger is a complete failure of human reason, an absolute sickness of the soul that must be eradicated at all costs. But what if they were fundamentally wrong, or, at the very least, what if they were missing a massive, critical piece of the psychological puzzle? Prepare yourself for the ultimate historical plot twist that completely shatters the traditional Stoic perspective. Anger is not always a short-lived madness. In fact, under the right circumstances, it can be a profound, unparalleled gift. We have clearly established that exploding at a grocery store cashier over a minor inconvenience is a pathetic, embarrassing display of a fragile ego. But what happens when you witness true, undeniable injustice? Modern philosophers and psychologists argue that failing to feel anger in the face of genuine evil is not a sign of emotional mastery. It is a profound sign of moral bankruptcy. A person who watches an innocent person get bullied or oppressed and feels absolutely zero anger is not a tranquil Zen master. They are morally numb and complacent. Consider the defining moments of the American Civil Rights Movement. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a man of profound peace and strictly advocated for nonviolent action. Yet he was understandably and righteously incensed by the horrific, daily reality of racial injustice. He did not use Stoic mental gymnastics to convince himself that segregation was merely an indifferent external event that should not disturb his inner peace. He did not mentally distance himself to the point of apathy. Instead, he felt the burning rage. But rather than letting it turn him into a destructive, collapsing building, he proactively channeled that immense, fiery energy. He specifically spoke about transforming the raw, unshaped rage of systemic oppression into a highly organized, constructive, and creative channel for monumental social change. His anger was not a vice. It was a deeply moral, perfectly rational engine driving him to permanently correct a broken world. Now look at the realm of pure artistic genius. In the spring of 1937, the Basque town of Guernica was brutally bombed from the sky, resulting in the tragic deaths of countless innocent men, women, and children. The legendary artist Pablo Picasso did not calmly meditate his feelings away. He was utterly consumed by a visceral, blinding outrage at this senseless slaughter. He took that ferocious anger and immediately weaponized his paintbrush, pouring his raw fury directly onto a massive canvas. In just 35 days, fueled almost entirely by his righteous wrath, he completed his masterpiece, Guernica, which is universally recognized today as the single most powerful anti-war painting in human history. It has famously been described by art historians as a literal rage in oil. When a hostile military officer later saw a photograph of the painting and aggressively asked Picasso if he had done that, Picasso coldly and fiercely replied, "No, you did." These historical titans absolutely prove that anger, when successfully stripped of its petty, ego-driven origins, possesses its own distinct logic and incredible utility. Used judiciously and carefully, it does not overthrow the mind. It brilliantly clarifies the mission. It galvanizes coalitions, demands basic human respect, and forces a stagnant society to evolve. The ancient Stoics were absolutely right to fiercely warn us about the petty, vindictive anger that ruins our daily lives over trivial, meaningless annoyances like traffic jams or delayed airplanes. But their fatal philosophical flaw was assuming that all anger is identically petty. Righteous anger, the kind that demands justice and fuels artistic genius, is an essential, beautiful part of the human evolutionary toolkit. It is both a biological necessity and a moral imperative. The ultimate goal, therefore, is not to completely lobotomize your emotional spectrum by suppressing every single spark of irritation. The true goal is achieving a level of supreme emotional intelligence, where you can instantly distinguish between the childish temper tantrum of a bruised ego and the powerful, illuminating fire of moral outrage. How do we actually achieve this ultimate level of emotional mastery where we can harness the power of this psychological fire without getting burned alive by it? The absolute key lies in fully understanding the profound difference between a reactive puppet and a proactive master. The weak, reactive individual is a tragic slave to their own biology and their fragile ego. When a spark of irritation occurs, whether it is a rude comment from a stranger or a major betrayal by a friend, the reactive person instantly and blindly surrenders their entire kingdom to the emotion. They do not pause, they do not think, and they do not evaluate. They simply explode, allowing the initial, natural biological reflex to completely bypass their logical brain and dictate their immediate actions. They are a puppet, dancing on the strings of external circumstances, constantly blaming the outside world for their lack of inner tranquility. But the true master, armed with the ancient wisdom of the Roman emperors, operates on an entirely different plane of existence. This is where the brilliant secret of the 24 letters of the alphabet comes full circle and reveals its ultimate purpose. The Greek philosopher Epictetus profoundly observed that our initial impressions, that sudden rush of heat to your face and the spiking of your heart rate, are completely involuntary. They are natural biological reflexes that impose themselves upon your mind whether you want them to or not. You cannot stop the spark. However, the most critical realization of your entire life is understanding that the act of giving your mental assent, the act of actually agreeing with that emotion and deciding to act upon it, is completely voluntary. It is a fundamental function of your own human will. The 3-second delay created by reciting the alphabet is not just a neat little psychological trick to calm your nerves. It is the deliberate creation of a sacred space where you reclaim your sovereign power of choice. In those few crucial seconds, you step back and invoke what the Stoics called the observer self. You mentally distance yourself from the blazing emotion and you calmly examine it like a scientist examining a highly volatile chemical reaction. You ask yourself, the ultimate filtering question: is this fire fueled by a genuine, moral injustice that requires my proactive intervention? Or is it simply the petty, embarrassing smoke of my own bruised pride? If you realize that the anger is just your ego throwing a childish temper tantrum because the traffic on the freeway is moving too slowly, or a coworker sent a slightly passive-aggressive email, you coldly and decisively withhold your assent. You apply the technique of negative visualization, reminding yourself that you expected the world to be chaotic, and you simply observe the feeling. You refuse to feed it any more psychological oxygen, and you watch it harmlessly dissipate into the air, keeping your profound inner peace perfectly intact. But what if you examine the fire and discover that it is, in fact, genuinely righteous? What if you are witnessing a true injustice, a personal boundary being severely violated, or an innocent person being mistreated? This is where you achieve the ultimate mastery of transforming the demon into a divine, constructive tool. Instead of letting that righteous anger overthrow your mind and turn you into a screaming, out of control, collapsing building, you take that immense fiery energy and you meticulously forge it into a highly concentrated laser beam of proactive action. You do not just complain or throw a destructive tantrum. You channel that intense emotional fuel into constructing a clear, logical, and incredibly powerful response. You use the heat of the anger to give you the necessary courage, but you exclusively use the cold, calculating logic of your rational mind to direct exactly where that courage is applied. You realize that true power is not about being a cold, unfeeling statue who completely ignores the realities of the world. Nor is it about being a wild, untamed animal completely possessed by blinding rage. True power is possessing the supreme emotional intelligence to feel the full, vibrant spectrum of the human experience, yet remaining the undisputed, absolute monarch of your own mind. As the great emperor Marcus Aurelius promised his own soul, you have absolute power over your mind, not outside events. And the moment you truly internalize this ancient, unshakable reality, you will find an invincible strength that no external force can ever conquer. To truly solidify this invincible strength and complete your transformation from a reactive puppet to an absolute monarch of your mind, you must pass the final, and perhaps the most difficult, psychological test of all. You must master the profound practice of tactical empathy and absolute forgiveness. The fragile ego views forgiveness as a pathetic surrender, believing that holding a grudge is a demonstration of dominance over the person who wronged them. But the ancient Stoics understood a brilliant psychological truth: holding on to toxic anger is exactly like drinking deadly poison and expecting your enemy to die. It is a complete illusion of control. When you refuse to forgive, you permanently hand the keys to your emotional kingdom over to the person you despise, allowing them to live inside your head rent-free long after the event has ended. Epictetus delivered a shattering truth when he stated that it is not the person who injures you who insults you, but rather your own internal judgment that these people are insulting you. The external action, the rude comment, or the aggressive driver on the freeway is just an event happening in the physical world. The actual insult, the burning pain and the furious indignation is something you are actively choosing to manufacture inside your brain. To break this destructive cycle, you must revisit the internal mirror we discussed earlier and actively deploy tactical empathy. The Stoics perfectly understood that humans are fundamentally social creatures, born to provide and receive assistance. Seneca powerfully compared the endlessly angry person to a useless wasp inside a beehive, selfishly gorging on the honey of others without contributing to the common good, only seeking to sting and destroy. When you utilize the 3-second delay of the alphabet technique, your ultimate goal during that brief pause is to fundamentally change how you view the person standing in front of you. Instead of viewing the cashier who made a mistake as a malicious villain intentionally trying to ruin your day, you must force yourself to see them as a deeply flawed, exhausted human being battling their own unseen stress. You must recognize that their negative behavior is almost always a reflection of their own internal chaos, not a genuine statement about your personal value. This shift in perspective completely neutralizes the projection bias that desperately wants you to feel superior. Empathy is not about agreeing with bad behavior, and forgiveness is not about letting people walk all over you. As we learned from the righteous anger of history, you can fiercely demand justice and set incredibly strong boundaries without surrendering your inner tranquility. You can coldly and logically address a problem without letting your blood boil. Forgiveness simply means that you are intelligently releasing the burning resentment, destroying your own soul. Let us dig deeper into this concept of mental distancing to ensure your fortress is impenetrable. The practice involves distancing yourself from present emotions and standing as a detached observer of your internal landscape. Picture a serene valley watched by an observer who remains completely unperturbed as a violent thunderstorm rolls through. The storm is your anger, and the observer is your rational self. When anger threatens to erupt, turning to this observer viewpoint allows you to halt the surge of adrenaline. In this beautifully detached state, you finally see anger for what it truly is: a transitory, mutable emotion subject to your conscious control. It is merely a biological suggestion from your nervous system, a suggestion you have the absolute authority to boldly reject. By combining the biological hack of the alphabet, the inner mirror, negative visualization, and tactical empathy, you construct an impenetrable fortress around your mind. You will never again be the collapsing building that crushes itself in a blind rage. Instead, you will walk through the unpredictable world with a supreme calm, knowing that while you cannot control the raging storms outside, you have achieved unquestionable mastery over the weather inside your own mind. Ultimately, the grand, overarching secret of the Roman emperors and the brilliant Stoic philosophers comes down to one single, undeniable principle: the absolute dichotomy of control. Every single day of your life, you are going to be tested by a chaotic, completely unpredictable world. You will inevitably encounter rude cashiers, aggressive drivers weaving through traffic at 80 miles per hour, passive-aggressive co-workers, and moments of genuine, heartbreaking injustice. You have absolutely zero control over these external events, and spending your precious energy wishing that the world was perfectly fair and completely polite is a profound waste of your human potential. The weak, reactive individual will spend their entire existence throwing endless temper tantrums, playing the eternal victim, and allowing every random stranger to effortlessly hack into their emotional nervous system. They will live and die as mindless puppets dancing on strings pulled by other people. Let us deeply contrast these two distinct ways of living so you can fully grasp the magnitude of what is at stake. Picture the reactive person waking up in the morning. They spill a few drops of coffee on the kitchen counter and immediately curse their terrible luck. They get into their car and scream at the traffic light for turning red. They arrive at the office already exhausted, their blood pressure elevated, completely drained of creative energy before the workday has even started. Their entire life is a continuous, miserable state of emergency, reacting to 1,000 tiny, insignificant fires that they mistakenly believe are catastrophic infernos. They mistakenly think they are fighting the world, but they are actually just fighting their own fragile ego every single minute of the day. Now, picture the Stoic master navigating that exact same morning. The coffee spills, and they simply wipe it up, recognizing it as a completely indifferent event. The traffic light turns red, and they use those 2 minutes to practice mental distancing, observing the world around them with a calm, detached appreciation. They walk into the office with a full reservoir of energy, completely unbothered by the chaos, ready to tackle meaningful challenges. This is not some mystical, unattainable state of enlightenment. This is a deeply practical, logical skill that you can begin practicing this very second. True freedom has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you have in your bank account, how big your house is, or how much political influence you wield. You could conquer the entire known world like Alexander the Great and still die miserable if you are a slave to your own temper. True, unadulterated freedom is the ability to maintain complete emotional equilibrium while the rest of the world is losing its collective mind. You are no longer a reactive puppet. You have been armed with the most powerful psychological weapons forged in the ancient world. You now understand that the sudden spike in your heart rate and the rush of adrenaline are merely biological suggestions, completely powerless until you voluntarily give them your mental assent. The next time you feel the devastating fire of anger threatening to consume you, remember the lesson of Caesar Augustus. Force yourself to stop. Create that magnificent 3-second delay and mentally recite the 24 letters of the alphabet. In that sacred space of delay, pull up the inner mirror of Marcus Aurelius and ruthlessly examine your own staggering hypocrisy before you dare to judge anyone else. Deploy the impenetrable shield of negative visualization, reminding yourself that you fully expected people to be flawed, so their bad behavior cannot possibly penetrate your tranquility. And if you look into that fire and discover that it is not the petty smoke of a bruised ego, but the brilliant flame of righteous moral outrage, do not suppress it. Transform it into a cold, calculating laser beam of proactive action. You are the absolute monarch of your internal empire. Do not surrender your crown to the first person who cuts you off. Reclaim your sovereignty, master your emotions, and choose the path of unshakable tranquility. If you are ready to stop being a slave to your own anger and start building your own psychological fortress, hit the subscribe button right now. Join our community of proactive thinkers. Share this video with someone who desperately needs to hear this truth, and leave a comment below with the word mastery to pledge your commitment to owning your mind. Remember, the world will always be chaotic, but your mind must remain an invincible fortress. The ultimate power you possess is not over the chaotic world, but over your own mind. Anger can be a collapsing building that crushes your spirit, or a brilliant flame that drives meaningful change. The choice is yours. The next time you feel that fire rising, remember the ancient Roman emperors. Pause for 3 seconds, reclaim your sovereign mind, and choose proactive mastery over reactive slavery. If you found value in this ancient wisdom, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs it. Comment the word tranquility below to pledge your commitment to emotional mastery. And until next time, stay strong and always govern yourself. See you next video.